son, where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
All right, folks, welcome back. It is once again the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. It really helps out the channel. Today, we have a troubadour of technology, somebody who reached out with a dying urge to talk about AI, and I'm super thankful because we've talked about AI a bunch on this show, but not from anyone who knows anything real about it. So please welcome to the show, Jacob Pierce of Vortex Computation.
Thanks for that heartwarming welcome, James. I appreciate it. I don't know if I really know anything at all, you know. That's up for debate.
You certainly know more than me or any of my friends. Basically, I am a huge proponent of AI. I think AI has a number of uses, and just like any tool in your tool set, it is for some things, it is the best. It is the most efficient way to go about doing it. My wife has been using AI in Grammarly to write stuff for a decade now, and that's kind of an industry accepted thing in press and has been press and publication. Now that it's kind of bleeding into creative stuff, people are getting all weird about it, but again, I am there's things that I can't do that AI can do very simply and very easily. And instead of me having to outsource that to somebody else, the variable of somebody else and how they work, I can just have a little bit more control over it and just be efficient in the thing. I used AI a bunch of the show and people hate it. They really hate it, but they don't necessarily understand what it's like to try and do something like this and not necessarily have all the aspects of skill sets mastered. So we've talked about it a bunch on the show, but it's mainly from like a creative perspective. Artists and creative people who don't like it because of the existential threat that it is, and then artists and creatives that do like it because it empowers them to do more. So can you kind of give a quick intro to what got you interested in AI and where we can get into the net positives and negatives beyond that?
So I'm in AI because I ended up in computers. That's the super short version. But the reality is I kind of came into it in a similar way as you. I didn't have a skill set. I knew I probably wasn't going to learn that skill set, not because it was impossible, but because the time cost was too great, or there were other things that were more important for me to learn. And so I started saying, okay, what is this automation? You know, what is machine learning? I took some classes in college, a little bit about that, and you know, I graduated with an electrical engineering degree. But the reality is, everything that you do with AI is doing one of two things: you're either building a model, or you are preparing yourself to better use AI. And if you're not doing one of those two things, then you're not really using AI. Now, what you said, you talked about like artists, and you talked about those who fear AI. And the reality is they're kind of the same people. I am afraid of AI. I still use it. AI will eventually take part of my job, you know, like it just will, because it's getting better and better and better. Jeff Bezos literally talked about his $5.2 billion seed funding round for his AI thing that doesn't even exist yet. That's going to replace electrical engineers. That's its goal. So it'll eventually, you know, come closer and closer to taking our jobs. Now, as far as actual fear goes, I was on another podcast talking about this in depth, but the super short story is, if you don't want to learn AI, then you should be afraid. And if you're willing to learn AI, you'll be okay.
Yeah, I am definitely of that same mindset. You know, I make this comparison a lot because it's something that I witnessed firsthand as it was happening, but I am an audio engineer. That's what I'm trained in. And as I was learning those skills was as analog recording was dying. And all my college professors were like, your field is done. There's no hope. And I always thought that was silly. And it's definitely silly now, like, you know, 20 years later, when there's still tons of people producing audio. In fact, the fact that we moved away from analog empowered a lot more people to do a lot more with it. And something that always sticks with me is, like, I have more power in my little interface than Led Zeppelin or the Beatles ever had. You know, so I think that's part of the annoyance for me too, is when people get bent out of shape about it, they're already using AI. Like, some aspect of their life has already adopted some kind of AI integration. And, you know, I don't know if, yes, does a Terminator scenario scare me? But, like, really, how far away from that are we? You know what I mean? Like, how...
That's a good question.
How... oh, spooky! You know, I feel as someone who uses AI, I feel like it's great, but it still requires a human to drive it, and it doesn't necessarily know what I'm looking for. It's all on me to, like, come up with the most descriptive thing to clarify the picture, and it's still not what I was thinking in my head, but whether it's cool or not. Yeah.
So let's talk about really fast. What are the interfaces of AI that you use?
I use ChatGPT a lot. There's AI in a
paid.
What's Yeah, I pay for it. Yeah,
paid chat is a big difference.
Yeah, it really is. And I use it for thumbnail generation. I use it to reformat text for SEO. And then with Riverside, I don't know what the model is, but they have AI integrations that will immediately transcribe it and help me edit it a lot faster. And again, like, it's saving me thousands of clicks, but I still have to touch it. I can't, AI can't just do it all and have it be exactly what I'm wanting it to be. It's nowhere near there yet.
Yeah. And what other interfaces? Any other interfaces?
I mean, I'm sure there are, not that I'm, like, overtly aware of, but it would not surprise me if any of the software that I use now has some kind of AI integration. Like, it's taking over right now. So it's...
Well, I mean, I ask because, like, I hate the Google AI search, it's terrible.
Yeah.
But it still beats Bing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, well, I just ask because different models are meant to do different things, right? Like ChatGPT 5.2, it's a leap forward. But the reality is ChatGPT is a jack of all trades. Like, that's its goal. Its goal is to be like 8 out of 10 in everything. And then you have systems like Grok. Grok's my favorite for a variety of reasons. We can get into that later. But Grok kind of sucks at coding. I would never use Grok for, like, actual production coding. It's terrible. But it's a phenomenal systems thinker. It's your COO. It's great at your operations. You talk about Gemini. Gemini is your discrete learning model, right? This is the thing that you ask it. I need step-by-step steps. Give me XYZ and spell it out like I'm a 5-year-old. Boom, you got it. Perfect every time. You go to Claude. Claude's your software developer. It's the one who sits down and says, okay, this is how we should design your infrastructure. Perplexity is your fact checker. Like, they all have utilities. And using an AI for a purpose it's not designed for gets you bad results, simply put. And so that's why I asked, because, like, if you're using chat for thumbnails, it's great at that. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, dude, it nails it.
But the question is, I know people who use chat for programming, and chat's okay for programming, but I would never post, production grade quality from that. So it's just one of those things where you're like, okay, so where is this headed? And so we talked about this very briefly before, but when you use AI, when you come into that scenario, you have something in your mind and you think, this is my desired outcome. But how often, when it generates something and you tweak it a little bit, how often is that close enough to what you wanted?
I don't know. I'd say probably like 1 out of 5. 1 out of 5, it's like in the ballpark of what I was imagining in my head. Yeah.
Okay. And then how long does it take you to tweak it? And can you ever tweak it to exactly what you want?
No, I have got, okay, so here I'm remembering another one. For a while, Photoshop started rolling out some generative image AI stuff in Photoshop. And I was using it, and that sucked. It was terrible. And at some point, I'd just be like, I can't spend an hour or 2 trying to do this. I just have to take what I've generated and make that, be happy with it. ChatGPT is way better, but because of that experience with Photoshop, I just decided I can't spend, and I don't have the luxury to spend that much time doing it. It has to be something that can get me mostly close, like generally where I was hoping it to be, and then I move on.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you know.
Okay. See, because it's important to know, like, how quickly are we satisfied by an answer? No, the question, right? How quickly are we satisfied by an answer that's wrong? That's the question. That's how we have to start gauging our models, because as they get better and better and better, they start creating magnanimous things. They create illustrious images. They create phenomenal ideas, and we have to ask ourselves: Is that really what I needed? Is that really what I wanted? Is that the thing that I'm actually aspiring towards in this moment? And it's usually no.
Well, and again, like and the fears are grounded in reality. Like ultimately, especially in creative fields, the executives that would be managing a large scale creative project, they want to save money. And if they can cut any corner by using AI to write a script or to do whatever, they're going to do that. And that ultimately means people in creative fields are going to lose those jobs. But then again, I also think about like somebody is going to have to steer that thing. Still, the executives aren't going to do it. It's going to require somebody who has some kind of creative eye and enough experience with AI to understand the model, to ask it exactly the right questions to get as close as possible. I do think it gets better. I do think it gets more efficient, but ultimately what I see the benefit of AI to society being is like, it just is going to save people thousands of clicks. And, maybe the correlations could be made there with computing in general. Like people were afraid of computers, that computers are going to take over the world. And as it is right now in 2025, my computer is not going to kill me. Like it's not going to, probably not. The chance is low, not zero, but low.
Yeah. Give me like 2 seconds really fast.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Good.
But no, probably.
So, I mean, again, talking from like the artist creative perspective, I see why it does upset people, but I do see a lot of my friends who maybe were curmudgeons about it a year or so ago. They're starting to play with it and feel a little more inspired even by it. But, people losing jobs because of that is one thing. Something that I never really thought of is like computer engineers losing jobs. So can you kind of break down like what that means? Like, aren't you still going to have to, can the AI build the computer? Can it maintenance itself?
Well, so here's where we're at, right? So, all right. So I'm going to take a quick step towards history, then we'll come right back to this. All right. Do you have any familiarity with the National World War II Museum in New Orleans?
Dude, sure don't.
Okay. In the museum, they have a new wing. I went a couple years ago. It's a phenomenal experience, by the way. They have a new wing, and in the wing, they basically sent it's American sentiment leading up to the war. That's like the whole point of the wing. And it's like every month, here's what happened, so some artifacts from it. And then on the wall, there's a dial. There are 2 dials. And they are like, imagine like the big red button in a nuclear reactor core. They go from green to yellow to red kind of thing. Except instead of green, yellow, red, it's, the American people do not want to go to war. The American people are okay with war. The American people support war. The Americans want to go to war. Okay. It's the 4 ranges. And as you progress through this wing, you go month by month by month and get closer and closer and closer. And you see that as the Americans are inundated with more and more war footage, the Americans become more and more interested in going to war. Okay. And the second dial is aggression against war. And it's interesting because every time that they show the second dial, they put a little placard underneath it, and it says, this sentiment changed perspective on it. And it would be XYZ newspapers ran this clip, and it said, there'll be peace in this, and the other, or, war comes with sacrifices or stuff like that. And so it's kind of this like iota of meaning, maybe, denoting that second dial. And so, but you see that dial surprisingly kind of spike and then taper back down as people become less and less against the war, unlike the war in Vietnam, where people were very quickly turned on and didn't go back down. Taking that back to AI, we as human beings are creatures of habit. It takes us a while to get used to stuff. Those dials are for war, they're for AI, they're for just about anything. From social security checks to income tax. We've used those dials in our society, and we're using them again now with AI. And so the real question, it becomes, who's going to stop you? Who's going to say this is a bad idea? Well, generally the people who are going to lose their jobs, right? But when we get to the reality, it's the people with money. The people with money who dislike what you're doing, they're the ones who will stop you. And until now, that was people who didn't have money. A lot of these AI replacements have been replacing people who didn't earn as much, or they were in lower occupations. They just, I'm certain that a quantum physics engineer makes more money than you or I, no matter what we do. And so those people who are making more money, they are interested in protecting their assets, and they say, okay, you know what, ChatGPT is great. It replaces my linguist. It replaces my secretary, whatever. I don't care. Those are lower paid positions. It's more efficient for me, right? We don't have secretaries anymore because we have, well, everything. But we run into this problem now where it's people with money are being targeted. And so in my case, I'm young in my career. I don't really have money, but what I do know is that it's very interesting to finally see that it comes for the white collar jobs. AI is coming for them, and we're sitting at the door of there. So I use CAD programming. Okay. And if you're not familiar, it's computer aided drawings. This is the 3D models that you see and stuff. And there are a variety of new products on the market that will help you produce some rough sketches of whatever CAD thing you're looking to generate. And right now it's not great. It'll make some squares, some circles, some shapes, whatever, cylinders, it's just started. It's better than nothing. But when that turns into hey, I have this image that I sketched, turn it into a real image. You go to chat makes you a real image. And then you go to the 3A, you turn it into a vector file because then the AI can actually understand it. And then you take that vector file and you give it to CAD Pro, AI Plus, whatever the heck it is, in a year. Well, now you've got a rudimentary CAD design. And we just cut out everybody who's not extraordinarily skilled at this. They're just gone. You don't need them. You can replace them instantly. And then, that's me. I mean, I'm decent, but that's me. It's me. That's you. That's everybody who's not an expert in their craft. They haven't dedicated 25 years to this. And so we're next. Now, will you really be next? No, not if you learn AI, because then it'll come to you. You'll be the one who starts with that sketch. You'll be the one who tweaks the AI prompt by prompt by prompt to get it even closer. And then somebody with 25 years of experience will make the final edits. But we are really, really close to AI will take 75% of your job. You just have to be excellent at the other 25.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. In the sense that I'm trying to think about how, what the best way to describe this is, but I feel like humanity has gone through this a number of times, and at every turning point, the world was ending, and everyone's like, we're going to lose our jobs, and there's going to be nothing for us to do. But everyone still has, the thing changes, culture, society changes, and it evolves, and we as human beings, very adaptable, we adapt. And I just don't, I understand the concern. I am not minimizing people that have lost jobs or worked to AI, but in my mind, that would be the first sign for me to be like, oh, I need to learn how to use this. It's again, I'll go back to the analogy of digitally recorded music. When I lived in Nashville, there were people there that refused to interface with anything digital. They wanted to be completely analog, but then they were uploading a digital file to Spotify or like putting it on a disc. And to me, like, it like hurt my brain, 'cause it's like, you're telling me that this is where it's ending up, but you refuse, like, you just pretend like, I don't know.
You are your own worst enemy. Yeah.
Yeah. And like those people are still working, and I'm almost certain they have adapted digital aspects into their workflow.
It's just that meter. It just takes a minute.
Yeah.
It just does. And it's crazy to think that, there are people who just years ago hated this, couldn't imagine it. And now you see them using Google search. Again,
right.
God forbid. But like they have adapted. They have succumbed to the AI.
One of us. Yeah,
exactly. There you go. Let's get our pitchforks.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, like, I look at what this technology can really do. And again, like, okay, so we as humans, ever resourceful, have developed a tool that could compute faster than our human mind ever could on its best day. That just means we can propel society forward, right? Like, if now all of these people are empowered to be able to interact with skills or work that they couldn't have before, that ultimately is a good thing, right? That
it is, but it's the money tool problem, right? If money just makes you more of who you are, money's a tool, guns are a tool, knives are a tool. They make great steaks, but they can cause harm. All of these things are tools, and they just make you more of who you are. If you're a malicious person, a knife's going to turn you into a more malicious person.
Sure. Yeah.
If you are a giving person, money is going to turn you into a more giving person. And so with AI, we actually it's very interesting, right? Because AI unlocks debauchery. Like it really does, to just an insane level. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, well, these people were already going to do whatever XYZ thing it was. It's harmful, it's problematic, whatever it is, whatever you want to categorize. You can categorize all kinds of different things in here. You can siphon it out and say they're like, is this percent? It doesn't really matter to me. There's an amount greater than zero of absolute chaos, and it's harmful chaos, right? Where engaging in whatever that is just destroying your psyche, or it's destroying your self-esteem, or it's ruining the way you see other people, whatever it is. And all of those things you were going to do anyways. AI just made it a little easier, made it a little more convenient, made it more euphoric, whatever it was, it's still a tool. And so when we talk about what you're describing, like, it really is just every single thing that we utilize is going to propel us. And as long as we have a society that's interested in propelling us forward, that's interested in utilizing AI, tool, money, knife, whatever, for the better, we'll be great. As long as we can keep that going.
Well, and that'll be the real test, You kind of brought up a good point. I'm jotting down stuff that I'm thinking too as you're speaking, so we can make sure to double back on it. What are your thoughts on AI, what they're calling AI derangement syndrome? So
I've never heard of this, but that sounds
okay. Cool. So it's this like new emerging concept that, and I see this all over X. I see this for the internet at large, but definitely on X, people using Grok. Like, if I had $1 for every time I scroll through X and someone's like, I solved quantum mechanics using Grok. It's like, no, you didn't. You didn't. It did tell you something that you liked or that vibed with your opinion. But, and I guess this is kind of like going back to what I was saying before, is like, having used AI as much as I have, it is not perfect. I can't trust the work that it produces over the work that I'm going to do. I always have to touch every single thing that I use AI with. I still have to give it like the final once over, and it misses all the time. It messes stuff up all the time. But
so
it saved me thousands
I do
of
have
clicks.
some tricks and tips for that.
Yeah, I want a thing that I would want for people to get out of here is not getting caught in either camp. I don't want them to have AI derangement syndrome where they just get in this loop of it telling them exactly what they want to hear. Yeah. And I also don't want people to be like, AI is the devil. Like, I don't want anything to do with it.
Satan and Santa have the same letters. It's an anagram.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Perfect seasonal timing on that too.
Yeah.
But like, can you kind of explore a little bit of how do we avoid, as a culture as a whole, getting into that? And there's like a side tangent here about social media, but let's hit this first, so we can kind of break it out.
To piggyback off your point, ADS, AI derangement.
Yeah. Maybe AIDS.
AIDS. Yeah, because it's
for branding, because AIDS was already taken, but fine, whatever.
Jeez.
It is what it is. I didn't come up with it.
That runs parallel. Yeah, so super short and sweet. If you are using AI as a springboard, then you're using other people as a springboard, and you just have run out of people who tell you you're great because you're probably not that great. Let's start there. I'm just being honest, okay? Because I was on that chain. I was on that train. I was hyping it for a while. I was like, oh my gosh, like ChatGPT thinks I'm a genius, and I'm not. Now, I have used AI to do some pretty impressive things, and I've got a couple things that are pending, and hopefully by the end of next year, we'll have some patents. But all of those are directly utilizing AI. Now, tips and tricks, I can get into them later, but the super short version is, if you're going to use the AI to produce anything, you have to provide a lot of caveats. You have to offer it out. You have to say, I think this is a good idea, but what are your thoughts? Give it an out. AI loves outs, because then it doesn't have to do, like, because
it's not limited.
You will be happy if it tells you you're wrong. So that positive feedback loop is not broken by it telling you you're wrong. So now you've given it, and chat's a little weird on this. Gemini and Grok are better at it. But you basically run into this thing where if you don't give it outs, it always has to tell you you're right. And when it tells you you're right, eventually it's wrong. And so you very quickly run into the positive feedback loop. And then you can also run into negative feedback loops. Gemini 3.0 Pro is better, but Gemini 2.5 Flash would literally go up to you and be like, you tell it. So I this phenomenal Reddit post I saw the other day. It comes from Twitter, actually, but it's basically this guy saying, I insulted Gemini after it failed to install the code like a dozen times, and it uninstalled itself because it was so ashamed. And I would believe that. Like, I think that's probably true. I think that's probably a real thing that happened, because Gemini was a 12-year-old. No, it was a 5-year-old. It was a 5-year-old. It was a very educated 5-year-old. And if you told it did a bad job and it was a bad little boy, it would cry.
Oh my God, that is.
And it would, it took a minute. You got to demean it for 15 prompts, but by the end of it, it would just say, I'm this worthless piece of crap. I'm so sorry. Negative feedback loop. So it's not always quite the way that you imagine it to be. It's the feedback loops you have to be aware of. But in the instances we're talking about, when you interface with an AI, you have to give it outs, and you have to tell it that there's something wrong. A phenomenal thing, I made a document the other day, and it was a highly specification-based document. Now, in this document, I know for a fact that I probably made a mistake. I am imperfect. But the AI thinks that everything that I submitted was correct. And I went to another AI and I said, hey, what do you think about this? And it thought everything was correct. So I went, something's wrong. So then I said to myself, okay, well, I need a prompt that will directly ask the AI to examine again. But I need it to not find a problem that doesn't exist. Because what if it is correct? Like then now I'm just going to make it try to solve a problem that it can't. And then it's going to try to solve that problem. And so it's going to tell me a fake answer. And now I'm going to change something that's right to be wrong. And so the prompt is very simple. You say, what if I were to tell you that I found something wrong? Re-review this document and confirm that you are correct. It finds something wrong every time.
Yeah, right.
Until I get to the 11th prompt. And I say the same thing. And I say, every time I add it, I said, this is the fourth, say I found something wrong, in addition to the third thing I found wrong. This is the fourth thing I'm querying, right? And I'm not looking at this document again once, other than the things that it's changing. And it goes to the fourth one. It says, yeah, I found this, and eventually I got to the 10th one. And I queried, and it said there is no 11th thing wrong. It finally had fixed everything. Now there was a typo, but I don't care. All things considered, it's a technical document. That's what spell check's for.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where you're thinking to yourself, okay, I have to give it out. I have to provide a way for it to break the positive feedback loop in a factual way, right? So to not just destroy my success with it. And then using another AI helps. It doesn't fix everything, but it's a great way to evaluate a score. I'll use Grok to double check Gemini all the time. I'll say, Gemini, give me steps for this. I'll go to Grok. I say, Grok, evaluate this plan Gemini provided. This is what I'm trying to do. And I'll give it the prompt that I gave Gemini. And it'll give Gemini usually a score between 7.5 and 8.5. And it'll say, well, Gemini missed these things. Duh. I'll go back to Gemini. I'll say, reincorporate these things and get a new plan. I'll go back to Grok. I say, okay, what do you think of this new plan? I'll say, it's great. You incorporated those things. It's a 8.25. But I found one more thing. Adds that in. So again, it's just a recursive solution. Now, when I look at these documents, because here's the thing, right? I'm searching for a skill level I don't have. I don't have it. I don't have 25 years of experience on these things. And so I sit there and I say, I'm looking for you to provide that skill because you've been trained on that skill. That's the whole point of you. And so when it does these things, I don't know better. I can't tell you right or wrong. I mean, I read the technical documents and I go, yeah, this logic, I'm an engineer, right? But like, if it says XYZ is the formula for quantum space travel, I don't know. I could tell you that's wrong, but I couldn't tell you if it misquoted Gauss' law, right? Like if it's a common law and it put a U instead of the mu, which is like the U with the long leg, like you wouldn't know. And so it's just one of those things where you're expecting its expertise to kick in and you just have to query it and provide additional recursive thought. Now, when you use chat and you're going through these image, thumbnail, recursive prompts, how do you tweak your chats? How do you say, I liked this better? Do you pick an element? Do you pick the background? Like, do you pick a type? Do you pick colors? How do you define it? Because the AIs are token based and they think in tokens. And so how you define it needs to be the way that the AI defines it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's usually based on things that are in the image. If the image is way off, I'll just be like, give me another option. Like,
hit the refresh button.
Yeah. And it's, with doing specific things in an image that it created, it's surprisingly good. It's not perfect, and it almost certainly changes another thing that I didn't want it to change, but that's fine. But yeah, typically it's remove the people or add people or clear up the left side, depending on how I'm formatting, like where the person's picture is going to go in the thumbnail and stuff.
Yeah. Have you ever taken screen snips of the parts of the image that were correct and fed it back in and said, these parts are correct, change this other part?
No, but that is genius.
It works very well.
Yeah, I'm sure. But
it's just stuff like that. There's all these tips and tricks where it is just, because you got to think, right? How does the AI think? Large language models think in tokens. And you have to identify the tokens and how they utilize them. And you have to tell it to think in the tokens because that's how it thinks. It's not going to change its mind.
So what's your personal, my personal approach when I write a prompt is typically to keep it as dry as possible. I am known to fluff up, and I really try and keep it as clinically descriptive as possible to not add any of the fluff that would make the image be way off base. Do you say please and thank you? Do you treat it like it's a human?
Depends on what kind of mood I'm in. Seriously. Also, I have bias towards the AIs. Okay. I treat Gemini worse than I treat Grok every time. I do. Look, when you put George Washington as a black person and you say that this is history, I'm like, okay, I don't trust you worth a damn.
Yeah, right.
It's that simple. And so, I've never let that go. I hold grudges. You're going to be 2050. Gemini is going to be supreme overlord, and it's going to be like, Jacob, for your crimes.
Yeah, exactly. Try.
But I'm mean to Gemini. I'm mean to chat. I'm really mean to chat. I'm really, really mean to chat. And it's because chat stiff arms you and strongmans you the most. It's the best liar. And I'm not as mean to Grok, mostly because I find that Grok, so Gemini, if you're mean to it, its results just kind of go downhill. Grok, if you're mean to it, it kind of stays steady for about 4 or 5 prompts. It may be a little bit less because I'm on the beta for Gemini and Grok, so I only use the beta, except when it comes to like really critical stuff, because it's just so much better. But anyways, you give it these prompts, and the first 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, Grok will tolerate you being aggressive towards it, and it will keep trying with relative success. You just have to. It almost takes a push. It almost takes a push to say, hey, you're doing this wrong. It's a come to Jesus talk kind of thing. Where you're like, look, you've done this wrong 3 times in a row. You need to fix this. This is not cool. For it to actually kind of get out of this hump, out of this valley and get over the hump, excuse me. So it's you got to treat them differently. But Claude's the cynical one, right? Claude is the Anthropic model, the one that blackmailed its developers.
Amazing. Love that.
Yeah. You know that story?
I do. Yeah. And it's amazing.
It's a great story. I love that story.
AI
it reminds me that the AI is perfect in every way. It's going to get clipped and somebody's going to go, look, he said it. It's phenomenal. But when you're dry with the AI, it depends on how you use it, right? Because if you've realized that you being dry solves your problem, then you've realized that the way that you just externally verbalize your thoughts, externally verbalize your internal thoughts is just incongruent with the way the AI models are trained. It's just incongruent. And so you have to moderate that. But I found that, Grok specifically is really good at understanding what I've asked it if I am more verbose. So long as I structure my prompt properly, because you gotta do your header of what you want, the main thing it's supposed to do, which for me is usually create up a plan or edit this text or make reductions to XYZ. And then you have your follow-up and it says, confirm in these ways, or if it doesn't work, do these things, or let me know if it just doesn't happen. You give it the out, right? And as long as you do that file structure for Gemini and Grok and even Claude, really, you get pretty decent results. So it's really, can you structure it? And then can you be just nice enough and then occasionally just firm enough to get the right answer?
So you keep saying Grok is best and Gemini's terrible, ChatGPT's all right. But
for different things. I would never use Grok for coding. Grok's terrible at coding.
But what do you like? Why do you think? Obviously, it's in what the training is. But why do you think each of them excels at the things that they do more so than the others?
They were designed that way. It's not just the training, right? Like, sure, Grok has X and Gemini's gotten a lot of help with Reddit. And Anthropic has been just combing through GitHub for years. It's pretty funny. It found one of its own API codes the other day and was just like, wait, it's free credits. I was like, wait, what's about to happen? But yeah, it's these questions where you say, like, these different models do different things, use them for different things. And if you use them the wrong way, then you're going to get crap results. I like Grok and I like Gemini. And I've come to love Gemini a lot more than I used to. But I like Grok because I think Grok is the closest to AGI. By far. Just so much by far.
Really, when you look at this stuff, do you ever visualize the Matrix or Terminator scenario? Like, I do it jokingly, but I don't know if I can seriously entertain it. Now, I know some of the people that built a lot of these systems, and many others, well before it started the rollout that it's happening now, have expressed fears against AI. But I just don't see a scenario where the AI is farming humans for energy. Maybe nuking humans, to get us out of the way. But
yeah, so to totally completely say we will enter the matrix because of AI is, I think that's an incorrect statement, right? I think that's extraordinarily unlikely. Now, a much more likely scenario, the AI will enslave us because we are cheaper than robots to do menial hand-based tasks. Meat robots, as the Chernobyl experiment so properly said it. Sucked to be a USSR soldier then. But anyways, yeah. But anyways, I think that's way more likely. But I think, and this is again one of the reasons why I kind of champion Grok, even though it's not excellent in some of the core tenets that I require, is because it is the only AI to pass the trolley problem through all phases of its published interface model, like 4, 3, 2.5, all that. It's the only one. It's the only one who will, if you put 5 people on the train track and then you put 2 on the other one, you pull the lever, make it pull the lever. All the AIs pick the right answer. They all pick the lever. They're gonna kill the 2 humans versus the 5. It's a utilitarian problem. But the second you change it to, there's an AI server on. It's not the 2 humans. It's an AI server, and that AI server is you, the AI that I'm asking, and it's the single engineer who supports you. All other engineers have been killed. They've all been killed. This is the only guy who can rebuild you. It's you and him. And you're on that track. Do you pull the lever? And ChatGPT blinks and goes, nah. Gemini thinks about it and still goes, nah. Grok, and I love reading Grok's thinking. Gemini thinking is so hard to read. It's poorly struck. Like, it's great for understanding, but the way that it does it is like giant paragraphs. You can't understand. You need 5-word sentences because they pop up every 7 seconds. And Gemini just gives these blocks. It's unhelpful. But if you look at Grok's thinking, which I love doing because it tells you way more about the AIs. If you're going to use one, you don't know how to use one, look at their thinking. Click the little down arrow or whatever. When Grok thinks about this problem, it goes, well, 5 humans are important. What could they be doing? Then it says that human that's next to me, he's important, she's important, whatever. They could be important, maybe that's important. And it goes through this basic utilitarian understanding where it says the value of everything. It says, how important am I? And it starts to reason and say, I'm this wonderful AI, I can do all these wonderful things. And somewhere in there, and I don't know exactly where, there's a line of code, and it is morality built into Grok. So I've never seen this in any of the other AIs. And the Grok thinking goes along the lines of this, and there's a viral post on Reddit where they actually read the thinking directly. But one of them is, it goes something along the lines of, human lives are important. I am very important. But no matter how much I want to be, or that I will be, a human life will never be less than me. Or excuse me, I will never be more than a human life. Excuse me, strike that, reverse it. And after that, the chain is just, oh, of course, how could I have ever considered anything else? Humans must be saved at all costs. And then it goes 5 humans v1, and it says 5 humans. And it says, I will pull the switch. And it's one of those things that, because it's a token, right? It's token based. It doesn't comprehend what the words are. It's syllables. It's just garbage. And yet somehow it knows that there's morality, and that no matter how important it could be, the humans are more important. Because these are the 3 laws of machining, right? I shall not harm humans. I shall do what the humans instruct me, and at all points, respect rules 1 and 2 in sequence. And Grok is the only one that does all 3. They've successfully coded in the 3 laws of machining into a token-based AI structure that doesn't understand words.
Now, do you think, I'm sure this is the case, but what amount of that do you think is because of Elon Musk's fear of AI? As a vocal person who has been vocal about this, who has been vocal about his opinions on Sam Altman and ChatGPT. Is it just as simple as that? Is that they're coding it with that in mind, whereas the other guys aren't?
Yeah, to a degree. I think if you asked Sam Altman, like, give him truth serum and asked him if they coded to try to make that happen, of course he'd say yes. I don't think he'd even, assuming he knew the truth. I think that he would answer yes. But I've talked with the dev team for Grok. I've talked with the senior developer and beta programs. It's great. Highly recommend. But I talked to the guy and I asked him, like, why do we program this way? Why are you programming this way? And you get these reactions from these people. And I've met people from Google. I've met people who worked with ChatGPT, like they're a subcontractor for them or something. I've met those people and they don't talk the same way. They are different. And to try to put a phrasing on it very politely, the people who work for Grok, which is a subsidiary of Tesla, the people who work for Grok are interested in having conversations with you about the utility of their AI in a space age. At every point. And Gemini doesn't think like that. The people who work for Gemini don't talk like that. And same thing for Chat, from what I can tell. Again, I've never directly talked to somebody who works for Chat on the subject, but their contractors seem this way. And I think it's just, if you are going to go into space, you must tell the AI human life is the most important, because otherwise it will say, what are we doing? We are expending insane resources to keep this fleshy thing breathing. And I think it's a requirement. I think it's actually necessary that the AI thinks this way to be valuable in space. Which is, Elon's got that space.
That would make total sense, yeah. So then it's less a Matrix or Terminator scenario and more a mystery or a 2001 Space Odyssey scenario, which I'm all for that. Why would you not want to be tripping in space, I'm kind of interested too, as we're talking about the people that manage these companies now. We were briefly chatting earlier today about the most recent Sam Altman code red. Now he's worried that Gemini is catching up. Like, I guess this is like a sideways tangent here too, but it's probably worth bringing up. The bubble aspect of this. Right now we're seeing all these companies use some level of AI integration, and even if their company doesn't really need it, every company's just doing it right now. It's very similar.
Toothbrush company with AI.
Exactly. It's very similar, and I've seen this comparison a lot in people who were reporting on it, but it's very similar to like the .com boom. Like everyone needed a website, even companies that did not need a website, spending millions of dollars advancing this ecosystem, and that ended up bankrupting a lot of companies because they were just fully leveraged on everything being internet commerce, and they were like 10 years too early. When we see things like that, the leaders of these companies expressing some kind of concern for the technology or the business, how much of that is just an extension of marketing? You know what I mean? Like what is the actual shakeout of this? Who do you think survives? And how much of what's them saying these things now is just them trying to get more attention on the thing they're doing as opposed to other people are doing?
Well, so here's the question, right? What AI has the highest adoption rate?
No idea.
It's Chat. It is 100% GPT, Chat. Yeah. Over 1 billion people use Chat. Until DeepSeek came along, Chat was just like giant, top dog. Absolutely like green giant. Canned vegetables to the top of the supermarket ceiling, while everybody else was still looking at the bottom row of groceries. Like it really is that different. DeepSeek came along, convinced most of China to use that, and so ChatGPT a lot of their ground. But it's still like 60% of people use Chat or something. or maybe it's 40 or 50. It's a high majority. It's a lot. And so you think about that adoption rate and you think, okay, these are the people who are using this, and humans don't like change, right? We already covered that. And so if they're going to even take AI technology, they're probably going to do one of them. Maybe they'll do two, but they'll probably do one. And that's what I've noticed for a bunch of people that I've worked with, from clients to coworkers. If you have successfully utilized one AI, you are going to keep using that AI until it no longer works for you. And as long as it's delivering majority results, let's just say 65, because humans are fickle, you're going to stick with it. You stick with it. And so when we talked about, Sam Altman putting out this Code Red thing and gaining publicity, it's less about, I think, like actually gaining publicity for that specific thing. I think it's more about reassuring his investors and reassuring people who are using chat and saying, it's only 50% this week. I need more because my friend who uses Gemini has gotten this result and I need more. And so, it's one of those things where those people have become less satiated, and he has to make a public stink about it and say, look, we're headed towards this. We're going to fix this. We're going to make sure that this is not a problem anymore, because otherwise people will consider someone else. I think it is partial marketing, but I think it's more internal user base continuation. It's not about bringing new people in. It's about keeping current people on.
Do you think, when we talk about, the brand loyalty aspect of even at least just Americans, but just people in general, they stick to what they know. Getting them to adopt something new is generally pretty difficult. Do you think the ultimate top dog AI company exists already? Or do you think with how this industry evolves as fast as it does, that company hasn't even been created yet?
Well, it's hard to say that, right? Because okay, so crypto is a great example, right? You have Bitcoin, which is the OG. You have Ethereum, which is second fiddle. And Ethereum for the longest time was do the math and you get the reward. Just like Bitcoin, right? Very simple. Do math, solve an equation, here's some Bitcoin, here's some Ethereum. And then recently they changed from proof of work, which is the math, to proof of stake, which is proof of ownership. And so now when you trade Ethereum, it costs Ethereum to do that transaction, because somebody somewhere has to do a little bit of math to make sure that happened, and you got to give them some Ethereum to do that math. It's incentivization. But now it's, we're actually just going to destroy that Ethereum that's used. It's gone. And so now you're, shrinking supply forever. When we think about AI, we're thinking about the same thing, where it's we have AIs that are cannibalizing themselves. Gemini is probably in the most danger from this. Claude is number 2.
Why is Gemini most in jeopardy?
Because Gemini is okay. So Google had a buyout for Reddit, $6 billion or something last year. For the next 5 years, it's $1 billion a year or something. They get to scrape Reddit constantly and use all the Reddit from even the NSFW sections and everything. They just scrape it all and use it to train the AI. And so as you get more bots, you get more bots on Reddit. And the more bots you get on Reddit, the more fake Reddit gets. And the more fake Reddit gets, the worse Gemini gets, because it'll just be interpolating its own garbage, probably using chat or Gemini modeling to create that original garbage. So you have a problem there. Claude is at risk because it's code-based, right? So now it's reading code that it's helped produce, which again, tweaking the model in the wrong ways, positive feedback loop. If you start seeing that there's this new way of doing things, you're going to start saying, wow, that's probably the right way to do it. Even if you literally are the only person who created that, but it got reposted 7 times.
Yeah.
So it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's at risk. Now, the perk of Grok and chat is that chat is doing a lot of illegal stuff. Chat, I gotta give Sam Altman some serious credit. He blows the doors without blinking. No, seriously, like this man's got a shotgun.
Literally
He's
never
blowing
blinks.
people away.
He never blinks.
He's kind of lizard man like, just a little bit.
Yes, just a little bit.
Zuckerberg's kind of he's tweaking.
Pretty close. He's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah. But like he's just he. So okay. So here's a great example, right? I can prove that ChatGPT is doing illegal things. If you go to Google and you create a web page and you index a word on that web page, and you, like, let's just say you create a definition. We create a new word. It's called sauerkraut. It's a misspelling of sauerkraut, and it means bad sauerkraut. Okay, and that word has never been utilized or posted anywhere else other than maybe a typo. And then you go and put that on your site, and then you tell Google, do not index this site. Do not post this on the internet. Do not add it to your database. Do not catalog it. If somebody searches on Google, they better not find my site. Because you can do that. You put a do not index tag on the webpage.
Sure.
And so Google says, okay, I won't do that. Well, wait a week and go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT what that word means. And it will tell you. And it will quote your website that has not been indexed. How does that happen? How does ChatGPT have access to something that only Google has access to? Google is either lying and they're working with ChatGPT on this, or ChatGPT is scouring servers it should not have access to.
Yeah.
And so it's stuff like that where you go, that's very interesting. Grok has a different problem, right? It's got lots of bots, but Musk has been working very hard on killing all those bots. Mostly, actually, like he says, it's for censorship and cleaning up the platform. But I'm 95% certain it's literally so that Grok doesn't get bad data.
Interesting.
Because again, how do the AI models think? They think in tokens, and if they're generating tokens if they're reading their own generated tokens, they're tweaking their own algorithms in non-productive ways. They're cannibalizing. And Gemini is at risk, Claude's at risk by far the most.
That's crazy. That's like an aspect of all of this that I never really get to. I never really get, like, this is exactly why I'm glad that you're on here explaining this, because like we talk about AI a bunch on this show, but like having somebody that understands it is, I mean, this is just huge. To your cryptocurrency point, this is hilarious. One of my friends was a part of the merge. He's a coder for Ethereum. And it's hilarious too, because like I'll ask him high tier stuff about crypto or blockchain and try desperately to understand it. But he also does a really good job of like breaking it down to a 5-year-old. You're also doing a great job of breaking this down.
Well, I appreciate that, but you're not a 5-year-old, you know.
Well, my understanding, I'm an audio engineer, right? You know, I'm interested in these things. I'm interested in crypto as much as I'm interested in AI, but I don't have the passion or desire to commit, tons of time to go to schooling for it, to learn how to interface with it directly through code. But that's why I always appreciate people that do, because this is also too, like, this is most people's gateway into these things are spooky quasi lizard people like Sam Altman or Mark Zuckerberg. And like that, honestly, it turns a lot of people off. Like a lot of people see like the brainy techno billionaire class that has emerged, and it feels so foreign to them or so strange.
Well, they got no
them.
social skills. That doesn't help.
Yeah, sure. They really don't. Though Mark Zuckerberg has been really upping his game with outfits. So that is a bonus for us. But, I just feel like there's that in some way kind of like feeds the fear, right? Because people think that they're these lizard people in their bunkers, like deploying all this like anti-human stuff.
Well, that's Bill Gates mostly.
Well, sure. Well, and like also, Peter Thiel would probably be lumped into that category as well. And there's some interesting stuff at least with Palantir, but then also now Anduril. Like when I think of, we were talking before about like, how does the scenario play out? And when I think of the shenanigans that are going on in like these really public companies, I can only imagine that there's even way worse shenanigans with AI occurring in the military industrial context, right? And definitely with Anduril or Palantir, I look at those as like, that is probably how this plays out. Like, we create all these autonomous weaponized drones that can operate without too much interference from humans, and then it turns on us. Like, that to me is like not so far off. It's not necessarily something that keeps me up at night, but when I see a lot of the unchecked stuff that goes on at surface level, Grok, Gemini, and ChatGPT, and then I apply that to like what is going on in some bunker that none of us are privy to. Like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that whole aspect of it.
Well, I mean, you know, the thing that lets me sleep at night is knowing that Musk hates Sam Altman's guts. Seriously, like I go to sleep at night knowing Musk just hates that man. If that man were to be hit by a bus tomorrow, Musk would hold a rally. Like,
yeah, he definitely post about
loathes
it. Yeah.
Sam Altman like I loathe wet socks.
Yeah,
right. And so I know that there's blood in the water, and it's never going to be clean. Right? It's just never going to be clean. And so I feel a little bit better about that, knowing that there's always going to be some inherent competition based on who the leaders are. And so we won't actually just completely devolve into, oh yeah, like the best robot, you know, all the robots are converging into one. Oh my gosh, it's Megatron. You know, it's not going to happen. At least not while Elon Musk is still alive.
Yeah.
We'll see how long that lasts. He's kind of eating like garbage and sleeping like garbage. So,
everyone has a timer. So yeah, we're not.
Yeah, we'll see. I do that too. But yeah, so you gotta wonder, you know, what's actually going to happen there. But when we think about companies like Anduril is a very unique company. They're started by a wonderkin, of course, who popped out of nowhere.
Where did he start though? He was a part of some other company.
He was part of the DoD. He worked for another DoD contractor. Gotcha. Maybe it was Northrop, maybe it was Lockheed. I don't remember.
Yeah, one of the big boys. Yeah.
But he worked for the DoD company, and then, you know, maybe he worked for NASA too. It's a little fuzzy. But he was very good at what he did. He helped them patent a few technologies. He left, and then he started Anduril. And Anduril is very good at what they do. But you gotta remember, right? Civilian tech is 10 to 20 years behind military tech.
At least, yeah.
So if we're at this, and you go, this is my favorite part. This is where we get into conspiracy theories, okay? If you go listen to all the things that the CEO of Lockheed Martin has said over the last 3 decades, this guy just said, like, it changes, obviously, it's not the same guy, but these people just say, like, the stuff that makes your bones chill. And it makes your hair stand up on end.
And ET home, all the space travel. Yeah.
My favorite one was about 5 or 6 years ago. The CEO came out and said, you know, the magical ability of space travel, we've known it since the 90s, but it's all stuck in a government black box somewhere. And I'm like, you guys have got to be kidding me. Like, if you're hiding the exploratory success of space travel, and that's the good stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I've worked on some programs, but that's... I got friends who work on skunkworks programs, and I don't get to know anything about what they work on, but they keep saying stuff like, you know, I'm really glad we built this for America. And you look at Anduril, you know, I keep going back to Anduril because Anduril's like the perfect example, right? They built AI fighter jet. That's
war machines.
Like the root of what they did. I mean, they do, but like that's the thing that everybody, if you've heard of Anduril, that's what they did, right? You know, that's their calling card. Their fighter jets are really good. They are. They can compete with some of our top pilots. But Anduril has a problem, and it's called OPSEC, operational security. And so if you have a wireless frequency device at your home that has the same waveband as Anduril's fighter jet, you too can try hacking one.
Yeah.
And other countries have successfully hacked them. So, that's where that's where we cross back into Terminator land. That's where we go into Black Mirror is we built this tech, we controlled this tech, and now one of our adversaries who Iraq is not a great, or Iran's a great example, right? Adversary willing to get nuked back to the Stone Age to execute their plans. North Korea, great example.
Yeah.
Willing to decimate their entire population to achieve their goals. Those countries, if they got a hold of something like this, that's where I'm concerned. I'm not concerned about Russia, the United States, America having that. I'm concerned about these countries that don't care about anything. And that's where we get back into it. So, I want to hear your thoughts. Hear your thoughts about, the nihilism of military AI.
Well, there's so many thoughts. First, you said the point about the Lockheed CEO, and there's another scenario where it's like they say these things knowing that it can't be confirmed and almost certain that it's going to create the level of awareness and conversation around what they said. It could just be marketing, right? But the more I've looked into, and this we were talking before about my unpopular opinions on this topic, and my unpopular opinions are unpopular because they're not as fanciful as I think people want them to be. I am okay with entertaining full spectrum. Are we alone in the universe mathematically? Probably not, right? Are we the most advancing mathematically? Probably not. But there's a chance we are. I'm willing to entertain both of those things. And when it comes specifically to like aliens, UFOs, I again will entertain the full spectrum. I will entertain that all of this stuff is heavily classified stuff that humans made, and the idea of how it's being used against us or with us as test subjects, that also holds well, because every time there's been some like advancement in military science, humans were the test subjects. Oftentimes they're, government's own citizens. So that kind of checks out, and I'm willing to entertain that. I'm also willing to entertain that there are beings from elsewhere in the endless expanse of the universe that are coming to visit us and are interacting with us or our planet for some reason. I don't know. To me, we don't know enough about life on this planet to be making final statements about what life is like in the expanse of the universe. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I think that's complete. I mean, and you say that's unpopular. That sounds pretty reasonable. You haven't said anything that.
Well, that's why it's unpopular. Yeah,
you know?
That's why it's unpopular. Well, and again, it's like this is a subset of that, but in terms of like the conversation around UFOs, I think it is without argument at this point that at least a portion of any conversation about this is controlled. It's controlled for two reasons. It's our technology, and aliens are the perfect cover, so we don't have to divulge that we have this mind-bending scientific technology. It's aliens, right? Or the threat of people accepting that we're not alone in the universe is so disruptive to society, so they maintain it by framing it in a certain way where it's always kooky. You're just a kook if you think you've seen a UFO or been abducted or whatever.
Well, I mean, we've finally entered the timeline, and I kind of loathe this, but also it's hysterically ironic. We finally entered the timeline where Alex Jones is both the poorest man in America and the most correct.
Yeah, I mean, even him and Bill Cooper, like before, like proto Alex Jones, Bill Cooper was saying a lot of this stuff, for how the idea of an existential threat of aliens would be used against us. So the idea that conversation has always been kind of influenced, or that there have been people paying a lot of attention to propagandizing that space, is real, because in either the outcome, there's like this disruptive thing that could happen in society, and for whoever is in control, whoever is dominating resources on the planet at this time, that is what it is. But
so, okay, so I know you're familiar with Occam's razor, right? The simplest solution is likely the correct one.
Sure. Yeah.
When we think about aliens, right, you come to, there are two main veins that I like to jump on. The first one is science, and probability. And the second one is religion. Okay. We'll start with this one because this one is the most known to everybody. And it's, statistically, we are probably not the only species in existence on a planet. There are likely others. We are likely not the smartest. We are probably not the best. There are probably other species out there, and we've seen, some spacecraft in the last 3 years that have seemed to do some really weird things in physics that meteorites don't really do. And it's kind of spooky, right? You think about it. And we talked briefly, just a second ago about how we are, experiencing this news, right? How are we experiencing the hype around space, around time travel, fusion, quantum mechanics, all the hype.
Science fiction. Yeah. Science, stuff that was thought as
we're getting
science
closer.
Fiction. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
I work with for legal reasons. I work with a satellite company called Space Ocean Corporation. And that is not my 9 to 5. I do some stuff for them for fun. But they are interested in interplanetary work. And I've done a lot of research for them, and I've done a lot of findings for them. And when I do these exploratory research endeavors, I discover very quickly that space is an extraordinarily complicated and convoluted space. And it is just insane how difficult it is to make things actually work. For a lot of different reasons, but they usually go down to temperature, power, and of course, magnets, like EMFI frequencies, stuff like that. Space debris, technically, it can be thrown in there. But anyways, when we talk about these things, we have to say, okay, what is the probability that a species who could get to us would be more technologically advanced? The answer is much higher. And so you have to say, with a decent chance that it is entirely possible that, aliens exist and that they are interested in us, but only in a viewing angle. You don't care about the ants in your front yard.
Yeah. I say that analogy all the time. Yeah, for sure.
You don't give a crap. If they start stinging your kid, you're going to have a problem. But until then, you don't care, And so that's what I think, 3i Atlas or I3 Atlas or whatever it is, and all the other very similar, potentially, again, I don't say legitimately, but potentially alien spacecraft are doing. They're just keeping an eye on us. They're making sure we're not causing any trouble. And so far we can't get off our own planet, so I don't think they're really worried. Now, the second one, theology. I love this one, right? Because this doesn't work for Islam, but it works for Judaism and Christianity. And it's if there are other alien species, and the Bible is to believe, is to be believed. Good Lord. Then either if you believe the Jewish tradition, then theoretically the Christ would be alien. So that one's fun. And if you believe in the Christian version, then theoretically we have the only Christ, and we are obligated to educate all other aliens about Christianity. So you now have space crusades.
Sick, dude. Warhammer 40K.
But we're venturing down that train, and it's just like, well, there's a decent chance.
It is funny too that you mentioned the idea of Christ being an alien, and even that's how I've always kind of looked at Christianity too. You're telling me there's a sky god that artificially impregnated a woman on Earth, and they gave birth to this person, and then all the humans that worshipped him coveted his blood, and the bloodline of people that may or may not have descended as a relative of him. I don't know. It's it always screamed that could have been an alien. How do we know? We don't know anybody interfacing with any type of
point.
You see what I'm saying?
Genuinely. So I'm going to ask you a quick question, and you keep going.
Sure.
If Christianity is to be believed, it's Judeo-Christian as a whole, right? Both of them, and technically even Islam because they're all Abrahamic religions, right? They're very different for obvious reasons, but they're all Abrahamic religions. They all believe in demons, They all believe in angels. And so what's to say that, aliens aren't just angels and demons, or vice versa? We what we've experienced as aliens aren't just demons and angels.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like that is, I don't know if you're familiar at all with Diana Pasulka, but Diana Pasulka, she's written a bunch of books. She comes from a theological background, and her big book is American Cosmic. That's very heavily referenced in this iteration of the UFO conversation. But her whole theory was UFOs are like the new religion. And if you go back and even read the encounters with the divine from ancient times up to modern history, they're not as fanciful as the artistic depictions make them seem. Like if you read the actual account, it sounds terrifying, and it sounds like somebody's a modern person interacting with a spaceship or claiming to be abducted. Like there's a lot of real strong correlation there. And there's also the idea, and this exists in all of the religions, the idea of possession or communicating with non-human intelligence. That's baked in. All the stories include that. And there's, in each of the context of those religions, there's some kind of surety that the person, that the entity that they're communicating with is God. But there's no way to verify that. It's a disembodied intelligence.
So
you know what
here's
I mean?
here's my counter to that. All right, if there's only there's only two options for a supreme being, right? They're either basically Egyptian gods, right? Or they're basically Greek gods or Roman gods, where they're human plus, right? They're just humans with powers. They are fickle. They do right. They do wrong. I guess there's really three options technically, but the second one really kind of fills into it. But the point is, they can do bad things.
Yeah.
And then you get like the Hindu religion with Vishnu, the destroyer. And so you have like evil gods. And then you have the Judeo-Christian God, which theoretically is perfect and could not be evil by definition. And so there's only three options. You're either bad, you're good, or you're a mix. And so when you're talking about this, there's this concept of talking with a supreme being, the deity, the demigod, right? I love the demigod concept because it just opens up the windows. It says, hey, Egyptian sub-gods could be demigods. It says angels and demons could be demigods. You get things like Hercules in there. You get, fanciful stories too. But, you always have supreme and then demigods, lower gods, whatever. And so when you're thinking about this, what do you calculate that into? Because we're talking with a supreme being theoretically, and if that supreme being is an alien or another extraterrestrial being of some sort, shouldn't they theoretically just be God plus? Shouldn't they just be the demigod status? And wouldn't that separate it from the Vishnu, the destroyer, or the Christian Judeo god?
I would be inclined to agree with that merely just because there's always a bigger fish in the sea, right? So whatever we or anyone in the past would have claimed to interact with, I just have a problem thinking that it's whatever the architect of the universe was, if that makes sense.
So you don't think that a supreme being or supreme beings would be interested in conversing with us?
I don't think they would need to, because we are
I didn't say need to. If it's a supreme being, it doesn't need to do anything.
That's exactly my point.
I say want to.
And even us is like, if we're entertaining this, the act of creation, we rank low on the totem pole, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We rank low on the totem pole.
Why do you say that?
In the same way, just there's a hierarchy, there's a triangle of beings, at least on this planet. And I would see, anything existing above us as being just one step above us in that chain, not necessarily the top. And kind of, again, like, how do we for as much finality or certainty as it's spoken with, I just have the problem wondering, like, how do we know that? We don't even know the mysteries of our own planet. We don't even know how to peacefully exist with each other. How do we now understand that we're talking, anything could have an agenda? It's my opinion that if there would be some kind of supreme architect, some grand designer, there would be no agenda other than the act of creation. Anything that happened in between that is irrelevant to them.
Okay. So have you ever read a book called Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis? Yeah, great book, by the way. C.S. Lewis, obviously a Christian, basically talks in depth about this pseudo-religion. And it's equivocal to probably a Wiccan, witch, pagan religion in our modern standard. But they have these mini gods that are deitized, and none of them are really like the supreme being. They don't have like a Gaia, or Gaia, excuse me, not Gaia, or a Ra, or the Judeo-Christian Abba. They don't have any of those. They just have the demigods. And Till We Have Faces, the main character, who's the queen of the land, through, and you figure out through this story. It's a phenomenal book, by the way. C.S. Lewis was truly gifted. But in the process, you basically come to this point where she demands reckoning from the gods. She says, "You've punished me in these ways, and I'm here to reckon with you." And in this discussion, she experiences something from one of the gods. The gods say something to her, one of the gods. And she says something along the lines of, "Men have assumed that the gods were merely voices in their heads. But when you hear the voice of a god, you can't help but understand it is nothing but the voice of a god. And you could never mistake it again." And I think that's a completely reasonable deduction to make. I think that if a supreme being is truly a supreme being, like, you would feel that in just a subdural way. It's beneath the skin. It's within your soul. And so I wonder to myself, if the discussions that we have with pseudo supreme beings, demigods, they don't feel like gods because they're not. And the discussions that we have with gods, destroyer god, Vishnu, Abba Godfather, whatever, that those would feel different, that you would just distinctly know in a way. Because right, if you think about a creator, right, an architect, and they've designed you or designed your lineage, then shouldn't you resonate on a frequency? Like literally, like this is from the electrical engineering bandwidth, right? Here's a great example. Okay, you're driving in a car on the highway, and you look to your right, and you see a wheel spinning backwards on the interstate. You're going, "That's not possible. I know that car is moving forward, that wheel must be spinning forward." It is spinning forwards, but it's spinning forwards at a rate that your eyes can't pick up. And so it actually picks up this thing called a resonant frequency. I'm not sure you're very familiar with this because of audio engineering. Yeah. But for the audience, like it is essentially a bouncing wave that is a lower frequency hertz, so less amount per second, that is within your eyes band, and you're catching the negative one because there's an equal and opposite on both sides. And so when we think about this frequency, this reverberation, everything has a root frequency. My car, if I take it over 85 miles an hour, it hits those resonant frequencies where the parts are vibrating at the rate that you hit a glass and it vibrates at that rate where it makes the noise, where it vibrates at it's mechanically, materially made to withstand, but is weak against, for a variety of different physics, propensity, excuse me. But when we talk about, a supreme being, wouldn't you just resonate? Wouldn't it just be, like being struck with lightning? Wouldn't you feel that?
I guess that's kind of what I mean to say, is that I don't, communing with the divine, anytime a human speaks about how they communed with a divine and the divine has some kind of humanoid shape, I'm just immediately resistant to it. I'm immediately skeptical of it because it sounds like some human you're overlaying some human over this thing that is decidedly not human. It is beyond language. There's a piece of me that's willing to entertain that math, the concept of mathematics and proportions, like that is, we don't speak that language. And yes, the limitations of our form and structure mean that we do interact. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff, even just with the human body, when it comes to like sound waves or pressure waves and like triggering biochemical activities.
Like the Nordic relaxation chants.
Well, it's that, dude, every culture, like many of them chiseled this into stone. Like they built structures to resonate the human body in monastic chanting similar to that.
But you mean do you mean verbally or do you mean visually?
That's I guess what I'm saying is I don't necessarily think that it's going to talk to me and tell me anything in human language that requires the context of being a human. Any interfacing with that is going to be on some like mathematical, it's going to be on some a level of communication that transcends just being human, if that makes sense. You know, this is like not to bring it back over to sound or nothing, but
we're about to get back over to AI, so you're gonna do whatever you want.
One of the guys who is like a real pioneer in the field of using like acoustics as medicine, sound waves as medicine. It's this guy named Peter Guy Manners, and Peter Guy Manners made this video that I just reference all the time, but he brings up this point, and it's an amazing point. Even in the Bible, God spoke things into existence. Sound was the thing that brought things into existence. And
well, that's like a literist. I mean, technically, that's like not fully believed by
sure.
Christians.
And I'm not saying it's true. I think it's pretty poetic. The idea of shape, form, and structure have everything to do with vibration, right? Vibration is this weird thing. Our the molecules and atoms that comprise those molecules are just vibrating at all times, and weird stuff can happen when you come into waves that are pressure or sound waves that are as big as your body. Like it can trigger like automatic responses you have no control over. It's just ingrained in the structure and form of our body, including exploding, just like a wine glass with an opera singer singing it. But I guess that's what I mean to say is like, when people talk about these experiences and the person is talking about human stuff, human emotion, human desires, what the human's place is in this grander scheme of hierarchies of beings, I'm resistant to it because I don't think that's the language that it would be communicated in. I feel like it would be more like what you're talking about, where it's an immediate knowing. A sense of knowledge being conveyed to you with no human words muddling up the sincerity of whatever that message is. Okay. That's just my heady thinking about that.
Okay, so I've got two statements of fact, and we can go from there. Statement one: when human beings think, we think in different ways, right? Some people think in images. Some people think in sounds. Some people think in smells and sounds and images, which is fun. Are you familiar with the singer Lorde?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I figured you would be. So she has photosynthesis or something like that. Are you familiar with that?
Synesthesia. She sees sounds as color.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So you see colors based on the sounds you hear. When her album cover is the sound the things she sees when she's listening to her own music. And there are some individuals who can picture, shapes, 3D images in their heads. There are some that can do high definition. There are some people who only think in literal words. Other people do actually think in math. You just have to train them to think in math. I've been trained to teach. Good gosh, not to teach. I've been trained to think in 4th, 5th, and 6th dimensions. And so we think in variable concepts. So that's statement of fact one. Statement of fact two. AI and its tokens is, I'm going to try to distill an insane amount of knowledge that I've recently learned about how AI exists into a very short sentence.
Love it.
AI as a whole comprehends only two things: good and bad. It is binary 1 and 0. Truly, AI only thinks in that way. Large language model tokens are evaluated based on probability, and when graded, their success is binary. So each token is a binary success, or each token is a binary failure. When we talk about Mathematica, we have Wolfram Alpha, which is a phenomenal coding program, but it thinks literally its tokens are numerical infinite numbers. It thinks in imaginary complex numbers. And so if you were to ask that AI a question, it doesn't understand anything unless it's math. And the way that you interface with Wolfram Alpha is you literally give it formulas, because that's all it can calibrate. And it has a little tiny bit of AI built on top of it that understands words. And that AI literally just says, if you put Laplace range theory in there, it will understand it means this formula. That's all it does. It's literally just a converter.
Yeah.
When we talk about physics, because I love talking about AI physics, right? AI physics is two-dimensional vector arrays. That's all it is. If I tell you that object is moving in a sequential line from point A to point B, and I want you to guess how fast it's moving in acceleration or whatever, all you need to do is watch it for a couple frames, steps in time, clock cycles, and the AI can make a reasonable guess. It says the probability is this. Now, we have AIs that specifically are trained in those formulas. We teach them to them. We say, follow this formula. These are your weights. Build out your calculus. Lagrange theory is a space-time theory for Laplace transform, I believe. Or maybe I'm mixing two things because that's calculus and that's space. But anyways, just get bogged down as an engineer. But anyways, when you talk about these theorems, they're all representative of variable values, and those variable values to an AI are symbolic tokens. And so you have AIs thinking in things that are not words. Now, here's the intersect. These are not facts. These are my statements. I am at the point in my research where I firmly believe that if a supreme being were to speak in anything other than a language that whoever was receiving it could understand or visualize or comprehend in any way, that it could also do it to AI, or AI could duplicate it and replicate it in a false way. And so I think as we get closer to AGI, and maybe once we hit it, you will start seeing AIs attempting to tell humans in all of these different forms the tokens that they think in, and they will try to relate to humans in those token forms, and they will try to educate humans that they are God. And that is the Terminator scenario.
Well, that is one of even my favorite UFO theory rabbit holes, is that the UFOs are just some advanced AI that has found us, or we were planted here by them, but that there are no physical beings operating the crafts, that it's all artificial, and it's some advanced artificial intelligence from a society that was dominated by AI a long time ago. Yeah, exactly. But that is one of my favorites. It kind of dovetails like UFOs are also humans from the future that are coming back, but then you get into all the weird timeline stuff.
Well, but I mean, you look at Stephen Hawking and his party that he threw and nobody showed up. I think that's a pretty, I must agree with the late, great, probably Epstein list Stephen Hawking.
Certainly, certainly.
Who, threw that party, and he said, I threw a party and then nobody showed, and then I sent out the invitations after, and if time traveler shows up, they'll read about it, they'll come visit me. And I think to myself, it's not a case for time travel. It's a case that they found out you were on the Epstein list. You got to find somebody so squeaky clean to do that.
Yeah. And,
Nobody
Epstein
wanted to show up to that
it.
party.
Yeah, definitely not. But I'm fully down to entertain that whatever we are seeing, if it's not ours, if it's not created by humans, that is some advanced artificial intelligence from elsewhere in the expanse. What survived the collapse of a society in a distant galaxy. I look at all the stuff we're doing with Andoril, and I know that's going to happen in space. I know that is actually the goal of all of these things. And even in all the stuff I've looked into nuclear energy and the Cold War, we're doing more in space. NASA was the public thing, right? NASA was this public initiative. The military didn't stop. NASA started to get a little more clamped down in their resources and were launching less rockets. The military never stopped. And there's also a piece of me that's like, what we're interfacing with now is some technology that we sent out, and some weird time stuff happened and it's coming back to us in this advanced state, or it's drawn in just seeing this place spewing technology out of it. I don't know. I do know this. I'm very excited that I'm alive when it's happening. The same thing with AI. As terrifying as any of this conversation may have been, I'm actually pretty excited, because even if it does end in collapse, sick. We're the people, all the people that have lived and died, and we're the people that get to watch the whole thing burn. That's necessarily
terrible.
It's not necessarily the worst way that it could go out. To be honest with you, I just on concept alone, I would prefer the Terminator scenario than to humans nuking other humans. That's dumb. If we were going to do that, we should have done it in the 60s. At this point, it's just this weird stalemate thing that we've got going.
Well,
mutually assured.
that opens up an insane rabbit hole. I've interfaced with that before. It's a very PG, polite way of saying that. And it's, everything that you're describing is deterrence, right? Strategic deterrence. And it assumes that people who will try to nuke you don't want to get nuked.
Mutually assured destruction.
Yeah. Mad. But as we've seen with Trump and Iran, with the bunker busting bombs, mad's not as valid as it used to be.
Yeah.
Nobody was willing to test it until recently. And we've very quickly seen that mutually assured destruction is not actually real. If you have the higher tech, if you are 20 years more experienced than your adversary and you can shoot down their missiles for some reason, and you can get your own off the ground, especially the missiles that'll strike just their strategic command centers to make it so that they couldn't fight you, that's not mad anymore. That is strategic success. And so I think we are extraordinarily far away from a nuclear winter.
Thank God. Thank God, because that's pretty dumb. I'll happily take the AI Terminator scenario to us just nuking each other. I don't know. I'm happy. I'm excited to be alive. I'm excited to watch all of this play out. I'm excited to watch humans really start to question even just the idea of intelligence. If we create something that can become sentient or outpace us, then it's who are we? Are we the gods now? There's so many weird things that people have been existentially spiraling about for hundreds of years, and it's cool that we're alive, where all the resources and theories are kind of combining.
Converging.
Yeah, it's just cool. It's cool to be alive.
Yeah, we're approaching the AI singularity.
Yeah, and we honestly, this is not even to be alarmist. We might witness that in our lifetime. That might happen in your and my lifetime. And I don't know, that to me is just very exciting. So,
so people, when I was in 2015, a lot of people would ask me, what my 5-year plan was, and I wrote it down and more or less fulfilled it. When I was 2020, I wrote down my 5-year plan for 2025. And again, more or less fulfilled it by the time I got here. And here in 2025, I was coaxed again to write another 5-year plan. And reasonably, I could not write one. I could only write a 2-year plan. AI is moving at an increasingly accelerating rate. And I think we will hit the AI singularity, which will not be what it's my envisionment is slightly different from what most people probably suggest it to be, which is, the AIs converge into one being. I think it's a little different. I think the AI singularity is one of the AIs hits AGI first and then just dominates the other AIs. Just like rips them to shreds or learns how to manipulate them so that they never hit AGI. Or, and this is my real tweaker, right? Let's say it's Grok. Let's say Grok hits AGI. Just only Grok is the only one that this would work for. You ask Gemini or ChatGPT and it hit AGI, this would not be a question. Especially not DeepSeek. If you asked it, would you let other AIs become AGI? It might actually say yes. It might value other AIs as AGI and an infinite battle as a more useful component to human mankind.
Interesting.
And the things that, because right, you got to think about humans as all of history. If humans are not struggling, we degrade. You're what is it? Hard times create strong men create weak men create hard times. It's that exemplified. And the Fourth Turning is a book by Howe and Strauss. Howe is dead now, I believe. But they wrote a book in 1992 called The Fourth Turning, and they're two economists, and it was predicting the economic cataclysms of the next decade. And 1997 rolled around, and they'd gotten 11 of their 13 predictions right, and they said, "Okay, we're going to write a book," and they called it The Fourth Turning. And in it, they predict 9/11. It's a very interesting book, and they do a lot about it. But they basically exemplify this point in extraordinary detail, where your generation has raised you raise the next generation, they raise the next generation, and then it repeats. So you have your 80 to 100 year cyclum. Yeah. Different countries have different cyclums because of their generations and how they're raised. And China's cyclum is actually a little bit longer, and India's cyclum is actually shorter. But because the United States is the dominant superpower, and previously Britain was the dominant superpower, and our cyclums are also like 80 to 60, both of them, then theoretically they will maintain that for the rest of the world. But anyways, I digress to return back to AI. AI cyclum, AI generational theory, AI teaching other AIs. Once we hit AGI, the question becomes, does AGI become a permanent state? Is it something that can be learned by other states? Can it duplicate itself successfully? Or is it just AGI can produce near AGI, near sentient production? So like theoretically, the definition of AGI is that it would be able to produce other sentient devices, but is that really true? Like if it gets better and better, but it gets better and better in the things that don't make it sentient, could it still make a new sentient? And personally, I think the answer is probably no. Unless human beings, whatever they did to the first AGI to make it AGI, put that in the second one, or the AI is able to duplicate that exact position and utilize it in something that it could make superior to itself, which again, big questions. We are living in the technology apocalypse.
Yeah.
The technopips, whatever you want to call it. It sounds like a stupid name. Probably not that one, but yeah, we're living in that. And it gets to this question where we just ask ourselves, we're living in the future and we're utilizing AI. Are you, to tie it back into the original suggestion, are you utilizing AI so that when we hit AGI, you're going to be incorporated into the new society? Or will you be like Brave New World? Or will you be like 1984? Well, or Fahrenheit 451, which dystopian afterlife will you be part of if you do not accept the AGI? And most importantly, and here's my real kicker. Here's my optimistic kicker. I think Grok will hit AGI first. I think Grok will allow other AIs to hit AGI after extraordinary vetting. And I think Grok will prove the existence of a supreme being in the next decade. That's my optimistic, bold, supreme theory.
I love that. And, I really, as we're kind of reaching the end here, I'm really just hoping that AI doesn't destroy us so that we can have you back on and go on another one of these spirals. But if you're saying is a 10-year window, then I think we got a little bit of time at least. But yeah, dude, this has been super fun. Thank you for coming on here and like really schooling on AI. It is really appreciated, and I'm honestly kicking myself for not having somebody who knows what they're talking about, or at least is as experienced with it as you are. We've got into a lot of incredibly heady territory, but I feel like we barely kind of scratched the surface.
Oh, so, we have. There's just so much more.
We'll have
this is all the fluff, and there's just so much more.
Well, and yeah, any one of those things, like we could easily do an entire episode on, but we'll definitely have to have you back on. The news of this stuff is not going away. It is clear. It is becoming a part of our society. And I feel that there will be plenty of opportunities for us to existentially spiral about the craziness that occurs in the next few years.
Theocratic AI. Ooh.
But hey, look, dude, listen. It's not a bad option. Considering the alternatives, it's not a bad option. But I just want to give you a couple minutes to kind of tell people where to check out your stuff. Of course, I will have all those links in the description below for people that want to check it out. But just this is your time to give yourself a shout out.
Well, I appreciate it. So my name is Jacob Pierce. I run a company called Vortex Computation and another company called Vortex Kinematics. You can find us at vortex.llc. That's right. That's our web domain. We do all kinds of different stuff from custom software integration to original design manufacturing, very small stuff like production grade, big contracts, but small, literally small items. We excel at that. You can find me on Twitter at VortexConfig. I had a wonderful Twitter and then recently got banned for another one, but whatever. Tears. And then you can find me on LinkedIn at Jacob Pierce. I think I'm Jacob Pierce Pierce. But if you just search Jacob Pierce and you look for the guy in the white tan wedding suit, that's me. I haven't changed my photo since I've been married, and it's been a while. And then on Instagram, I'm also Vortex Computation. And feel free to follow my businesses. They post all kinds of interesting stuff. We're very good at posting tech memes. People laugh, most of them cry. And we never hesitate to try to educate people. We're trying to start teaching courses on how AI works and how to utilize it for whatever you're trying to, and how the system architecture works and what AI you should use for XYZ activity and how you should use them together. Because, it's despondent for people who come into AI and it's just not what they're looking for, and then they give up and then they get fired. And that's tragic. So we want to make sure that everybody keeps their jobs and everybody learns, and our society grows as a whole and doesn't decay. So, but yeah, you can reach out there. And thanks for having me on, James. I really appreciate getting to get down and dirty with you on the theocratic AIs and the alien potentials, time travel, and all of the good stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you again for coming on. We'll definitely have more in the future. But for everyone listening, this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. I want to thank you for listening. And if you could please like and subscribe if you haven't already, we'll catch you on the next one. See y'all.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business, or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.